right, guys, I'm going to talk about some stocks that are on my watch list. I'm not trading them yet, but I am looking at them. The first one is AEM. This is the daily chart. I'm kind of liking this breakout here. It's making higher lows. It's hitting up against this resistance here, so I'd be waiting for something to break out here, and maybe there'd be some type of upward bias. Now I look at all the charts on a daily. This is the daily, and I look at on the weekly as well. You can see that this thing has been in a downtrend, but recently broke out of its weekly downtrend. So I'm waiting to see if it can hold, and if we can see it start to turn higher, I'd be inclined to bet that this is going to be going higher. So when the time comes, we'll see what the charts tell us, and we'll make a move at the right time. So AU, this here had a parabolic run. You know, this is a lot of the gold miners had a pretty good move here. I like this kind of cup forming right here. It's held its 50-day moving average, which is nice. It's really riding its 20-day moving average. So I'd wait to see if this thing can follow through, and I trade it with an upside bias on the weekly chart. I'm looking at this ascending triangle. Again, a breakout above this would give me a good feeling. I'd just be a little weary as it approaches up here to the new highs, around 37 bucks or so. So then it could be a trade in between here. Again, the charts will tell us. Citizens Financial. What you're going to find, there's a lot of negative bias towards banks, and obviously with the whole inversion of the yield curve makes it very difficult for banks to profit. So I'm taking a look at a few banks, possibly with a downside bias. I'm taking a look at this level here. This is like about 45 bucks. Looks pretty significant. It broke out here, kind of tested it, bounced off it, tested it, bounced off it. Now it broke down. I like this breakdown. The only thing is, it seems like it does have some support down here at 41. Right, that's right in here. And on top of that, I'm seeing a bullish divergence between the MACD and the stock price. So I'm not super anxious to get involved in this to the downside. I'd like to see how this shakes out. If I take a look at the weekly chart, again, it's been riding up here, and then it broke down. I think this level here, which is around 37.50, 38 bucks or so, seems pretty important to me. So if it does come down here and breaks through, I'd be inclined to play this to the downside. But I have a suspicion that it may come down here and may bounce off of this. So again, the charts will tell us, but this is a pretty key important on a weekly chart, I think. So this is the daily, and you can see this thing has just been trending lower, and it's been making lower lows the whole way time. So it's really ugly. Not really liking the way that chart looks to the long side. And if I take a look at it on a weekly basis, I see here this channel that we just looked at on a daily basis. I think there's two ways to trade this. If you think this is going to come up and retest this trend line and the moving averages, both the 15 to 20 are up here, say around 220 or so. You could take a crack at it and play to the downside when it hits the top channel, or you can see if it's going to break through. I think this is a pretty key level right here, maybe 175-ish. I think if it falls below that, it could possibly go down to retest this low here at around 110, 120 or so. So again, charts will tell us. That's the weekly. DTE Energy. A lot of energy names on here, as I mentioned, are going to be running higher just due to what's going on with oil prices. I like the way this thing kind of consolidated. It had a run up. It's been consolidating, broke out. I like it. I could have traded it on the breakout. I didn't, but I'm going to see and wait and see if this kind of pulls back here and tests this breakout level, this 128-ish, which is right around where the 20-day is. I'm going to wait for this MACD histogram to curl lower, see where it lands, and then once the MACD starts to curl higher, the histogram starts to curl higher, and it's above this 128 level, I might take a long bias to this thing. And on a weekly basis, same thing. This is pretty cool. I mean, this looks somewhat like the inverse head and shoulders we were talking about. Here's your neckline. We had the breakout. It ran up. If I could see it come back and retest this neckline, I'd be inclined to trade this higher. Here's here's Entergy, ETR. So similar pattern, right? You had this inverse head and shoulders. Here's your neckline. Had this nice breakout. I think if it comes back and retests the moving averages and retests the neckline with a MACD that's curling higher, I'd be inclined to take a long bias to this. On the weekly level, I see this ascending triangle. This is, this is going on for almost a year and a half. So you got this breakout. You might hit some headwinds up here at the 125 level if it gets there. But if it does come back and rests on this we'll call it 112.50 or so, and the MACD starts curling higher, I'd be inclined to take a long bias on this one. Fifth Third Bancorp, FITB. Again, with the banks and the whole yield curve thing, this broke down. It had this positive divergence, this is a bullish divergence between the stock price and the MACD. So I'm not inclined to take a short position yet, even though it did break down here. You could also see it did drop down here and here too. These were kind of false breakouts. But here's the breakout to the upside, and support, 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 support. So I think this is a pretty key level. This is previous resistance over here in May and June. So I want to see how this plays out. If this thing comes down any further and comes back to retest this 42 level and starts curling lower again, I'll be inclined to take a short position on it. I'm not going to take a long bias on it now because it looks ugly. It's downtrending. On a weekly basis, this is interesting. So down here, I think would be your primary area of support, maybe 28, 29 bucks. This thing has been heading higher, and then you can see on that pullback, it broke that uptrend. It's resting on the 50-day now. You could see it bounce and maybe regain, but if it bounces off the 50 but can't regain this trend line, and the daily is also showing that it's kind of stopping at the moving averages, or if it falls further and it's stopping at this 42 level, again, we're going to go short. Or not short, but we're going to play to the downside. Key Corp, here's a head and shoulders formation, another bank. Here's a key level around 22 bucks. You see it broke down over the past couple of days. I'm not going to play this with a downside bias just yet, but you can see that if this thing comes down and maybe comes back up again and retests this 50-day and starts to fail once more, I think you can see a few points to the downside. I would say primary support here is around 1850, just based upon the weekly chart. So there might be a little bit of a play in there. So here is a KNX. So this is Knight Swift Transportation. This thing completely broke down right here. So it had this breakout here, and it just kind of collapsed right here. So what I'm looking for is, if this MACD histogram up here comes down, it's going to come down. If it comes back up and retests, say, this 50 level or somewhere below it, and this MACD is starting to curl lower again, I'd be inclined to take a downward bias to this name. And on the weekly, you can see that this thing just completely broke its 50-day moving average. I mean, to me, this looks like a change in trend, right? It's had its nice uptrend from the end of 18. It's been going up, going up, going up. To me, this looks like kind of an ugly breakdown right here. So I'm going to see if there's an opportunity to play this to the downside. We'll know over the next couple of days and weeks. M&T Bank, same thing with the banks as I've been mentioning. Here, there's a little bit of a breakdown. I think this here, 160? I'm not wearing my glasses. 160 level seems to be a key level. So if I could see it fall below this, maybe come back and retest it and start heading lower again, I might be inclined to take a downward bias to it. This is this is a little nerve-wracking, and on the weekly chart, you can see that this 160 level is pretty important. It acted as resistance, 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 and then boom, it broke through. Now, is this going to be new support? We don't know. It did break down below its 20-day, but it did bounce off this 160 level as new support. So, again, not doing anything with this. I'm just going to let the charts dictate my next action. It's also worth noting that this stock, here it broke below its 50-day, but regained it. Here, broke below the 50-day, regained it. Hit the 50-day, regained it. So it seems like the uptrend here, at least on the 50-day, is still intact. So there's not so much downside damage to this name, but we'll see what happens over the coming days and weeks. OGE Energy, Original Gangster Energy. I kind of like this parabolic move in this cup and in this breakout. So I'm going to wait and see if this thing comes back down to like the $40 range, and if the MACD is coming lower and it starts curling higher again and it can hold this as support, I'd be inclined to trade this to the upside. This is pretty nice on the weekly chart. So this is a giant ascending triangle. It's going on for almost 2 years now. So a breakout above 42 here could be a significant move for this name. So as opposed to trading it for a shorter term move on the daily that we just discussed, if this were to break out, this is actually breaking a pretty long-term, a 2-year, 3-year trend. So a break above 42 would be very interesting in this name. We'll keep an eye on it. People's Bank. Same thing with the banks and the flattening yield curve. So this thing, it broke through its channel. It's pretty ugly, really big volume. So I'd be inclined to see if it's going to come down here to this 19 level. Seems pretty important. May bounce off of it. If it comes back up here and retests maybe the 50, the 20, or at least this line here. So, maybe 20, 50, 21. And the MACD starts curling lower again. I'd be inclined to take a downward bias to this name. On a weekly basis, it doesn't look as bad. In fact, it kind of looks like an inverse head and shoulders here. So there's the shoulder, your head, your shoulder. It broke out the neckline here, not on great volume, but on volume. And it just kind of been bouncing around here. So I think it's important to see this thing break down further, maybe retest this 50-day moving average around 18, come back up. If it can't get through 19 and the MACD is currently lower, that'll just confirm what I'm seeing on the daily. SRPT. So this thing, I don't love it. I'm just bringing it up because it did come up on the screen. So it was kind of coiling here in this triangle area. It broke out, not on great volume. I'm not loving it. Today it broke out. It's going even higher. We'll see how the volume shakes out. But if it moves higher and it comes back down and maybe it can hold this 84 level and MACD's curling higher, maybe there's a play there. I'm not sure yet, but certainly we'll let you know. On the weekly chart, kind of like curling here. It's got this downtrend bumping up against it now. So I'm tending to believe that this isn't going to really hold this breakout on the daily, because the weekly just isn't all that appealing to me. But again, it's on the screen, so we'll take a look. We'll watch it. You never know what'll happen. So SPLK, this thing is in this channel trending upward. Nice breakout here on decent volume. In fact, on the up days, the big up days here and here and here, all with decent volume. So there's some buyers stepping in here. So this has been coiling in this channel for a while. It broke out. Let's see what happens. It's going to come up here. It's going to pull back. We'll see if the MACD histogram starts to curl higher, and maybe there's an opportunity to buy it somewhere just north of 130 or so. On the weekly, I would say that it on a 130 purchase down here, which is actually the 20-week moving average, exponential moving average, picking it up here, I think your downside, max downside here should be no more than 110. I mean, I think kind of looks like 110 is a pretty important level for this on a weekly chart. So we'll keep our stops in place, but I'd like to trade this upside, but let's wait for it to pull back and we'll see what's going on. Walgreens. Stock had a massive sell-off the other day, and it came up on my screen. Although I got this green box here shaded, kind of looks like pretty good support here at around 43 to 44 bucks. It's come in this range before, bounced off it, come in here again, bounced off it, came in here again, bounced off it, bounced off it. So it seems like it does have some support here at 44. So I'm not really ready to jump into it just yet. I'd like to see how far it goes. And if it comes back, maybe fills this gap up to 47 and starts to roll over again, I'd be inclined to take a downside bias. If you take a look at the weekly, it's in this channel, kind of what we're saying. I'm not really inclined to take a downward bias here because it's still sitting here at the support. If you really wanted to get creative, if it comes up here to maybe 53, 54 bucks and it starts to stall, it's stalled here before, you can take a downside bias up here, maybe with some type of option spread. Or you can wait for it to come back down and just thoroughly break this to the downside on big volume, and then probably your next stop is going to be around 31, 32 bucks. Watch and see. That's all I got. So that's the watch list. Stay tuned, and we'll do some more trading.